coming up in this latest episode of Netball Unlocked. We're back for 2026 and we've come full circle with Greig as our guest. We round up the international off-season and how things have been going, check in on the state of play ahead of the new Super League season, and get you caught up with what we've been up to. Hello, yes, welcome back, 2026. Chloe, hello, and Karen, hello.
Thanks for having me. It's quite exciting. Oh, it's been like a whole year, I think, has it?
Nearly.
Yeah.
It's been, I think, a year, nearly a year, 11 months. I think it was the end of February that we launched this podcast, isn't it, Paul? So, yeah, gosh.
Well, I think a couple of courtside interviews, but this is the first time we've been sharing a virtual tea, coffee, Coke, water, whatever it is that we're going to kind of get through the next.
There are other options to drink, obviously.
tea for me.
Yeah.
Firstly, Karen, we're checking with you in a second, but Chloe, I know you're off to Milan shortly as well for the Olympics. How have you been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, busy. Lots of curling. I think that's where I last was. In December, I went to Canada to do the last Olympic qualifier.
Can I stop you there? Can I
did
stop
see
you there?
it. Did I see you try it?
Yes, Karen. Excellent.
Yes, I saw Chloe try it. Seen it somewhere online.
Yeah, that might be the Olympic handles because I got rinsed online. Yeah, it was amazing.
Play curling?
Stay
on your feet is one, isn't it?
Sorry. No, it's okay. I have to take that because there is evidence of it. No, I mean, kind of blessed and cursed at the same time because we got an offer from an Olympic champion, a Canadian Olympic champion, to give us a lesson. And so the person on my social media team was like, amazing, let's do it. She's actually a figure skater, so she gets on with ice really, really well, and I am not. And it's been put up in a really nice and flattering edit where I fall over. And I think the last time I looked, it was like 750,000 people had seen it.
Going viral.
Wow.
So, yeah. But, you know, the idea is to tease Snoop Dogg out. So if Snoop sees me fall over, maybe he thinks when he's in Cortina having a go that it's not so bad. And, you know, I think that's the plan. So, yeah. Lots of curling. Super excited. I'm actually leaving tomorrow to go there, and I'll be there for a whole month.
Wow.
All on the curling.
Very jealous. Yeah.
I think we'll get some medals. I think that's...
Fingers crossed. I'm out in Italy actually for a few days whilst it's on. Not there, but elsewhere. So I'll be excited to feel the buzz of the country and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Italy has lots of hopes. Yeah, it will be really good, I think. I mean, it's one of those ones that kind of creeps around because everyone thinks an Olympics is every 4 years, but it's like, oh, no, actually 2. But yeah, Paul, what have you been up to?
Working in the main. Moved house, actually, as well, so slightly different surroundings. And like you, heading off on my travels. Next week, I'm off to San Francisco for the Super Bowl. So what better way for us to prepare than some red-hot netball chat? And with that in mind, Karen, it's worth checking in with you because you've had a very busy and a very exciting off-season.
Yeah, it's definitely been very busy. You speak to people who go, you've not sat still. I don't feel like I have. Obviously, post-season, you go through all your recruitment, your planning, you're getting your staff back in place and budgets and everything else that kind of goes with kind of running a franchise and what that looks like. So, yeah, it's been a bit chaos. We started back in training mid-October with the athletes that were available to me. And I jumped on a plane and went down under and spent 2.5 weeks in Australia. So had really good meeting with the COO of Swifts and New South Wales Netball while I was there, and then spent 2 weeks with Adelaide Thunderbirds. So, yeah, it was really, really good opportunity for me to kind of deep dive into every aspect of professional netball over in Australia.
I mean, that's so cool. That's so cool that you're able to do that. And how does that partnership work, Karen? How do you start those conversations with them so you can just roll up and ask for a meeting with like the C-suite? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, connections really, like when you've been involved in netball for such a long time, which obviously I have been, you kind of come to the conclusion it is a very small world. You know, people do know people, so the guy I caught up with Manny in Sydney, and that connection kind of came through Jacob, who heads up our men's and mixed program at Thunder. He has a personal connection with him. He's a friend of the family, so he just said, "Hey, while you're out there, do you want to catch up with Manny?" And yeah, so sat on Bondi Beach on a very windy, wet afternoon. I was expecting to go and, spend some time on the beach and it'd be sunny. But no, it was like Manchester with palm trees. But yeah, spent a good few hours kind of picking his brain about, how Swifts work, how Giants work, because obviously they come under the same umbrella currently, and how that operates, what it looks like, what their staffing structures are, and how they all operate and work together. So, and just kind of some potential partnership opportunities that we may delve into in the future if possible. And then Adelaide Thunderbirds, obviously I've known Tanya actually for a very, very long time. I went out to Australia in 2000 after I played in the World Youth Cup in 2000 in Cardiff. I jumped on a plane and went and visited some friends in Australia. Tracy Nev was out there playing in Adelaide at that point. So went and caught up with Tracy, went to see her play, met Tanya, caught up with Tanya, had nights out with her and conversations. Yeah, we've kind of crossed paths many times since in those last 25 years. So it's always good to kind of keep those connections. And when the opportunity came up, obviously we were in talks around obviously the El Murray transfer and what that looked like. And I just asked, is there an opportunity to come out and spend some time with you? And yeah, they were very gracious in allowing me to do that. So super grateful. And it was, as I say, it was a great 2 weeks.
Well, I suppose, what was the essence of it, Karen? Was it just sort of a bit of an ideas conversation and a catch-up and to just see how things work? Because obviously SSN is kind of what we all put up as kind of the number one out there for us, and we're over here trying to do our thing and play catch-up. Were they picking your brains, you picking theirs, or was there other things beside?
Yeah, it was a bit of both, really. And for me, it was a massive CPD opportunity to go out there and just really deep dive into, how SSN teams are being run. And for those that know my position at Thunder, I'm not just the head coach here, I'm franchise director. And with that, actually, when I've deep dived into how like the Thunderbirds, for instance, operate and their staffing structure, it turns out I'm doing the job of probably 2 to 3 to 4 people, which I already kind of knew because of the amount of time and how tired and how busy I am. I kind of already knew that before I went out there, but it's just good to get out there and actually go, okay, so what does your staffing structure look like? Well, what's this person's job? What are they responsible for? And kind of just going through it. And I think the highlight for me in understanding that staffing structure is obviously they've got a lot more services available to them, whether those staff are full-time or part-time, but a lot more services available. For instance, they'll have like a performance manager who sits above the head coach, who will do all the recruiting, who will do all the contracting, who will deal with all the performance budgets, etc. Whereas, me as a head coach here, I'm doing all the recruiting, I'm doing all the contracting, I'm doing all the speaking to agents, I'm dealing with replacement players, I'm booking venues, I'm doing everything in kind of that space. And then they almost have like a team manager. So like Phil, I have Phil sat next to us on the bench, who's my team manager, who's very, very, very part-time. They have a full-time team manager who's literally doing kit, booking courts, sorting food, sorting venues, sorting transport, like literally everything. And you just sit there and you just think, wow, like to be a head coach over there is huge, huge, huge pressure. Obviously, it's the biggest, most successful league in the world currently. And I just think, wow, like, what would it look like if I was able to just be a head coach and solely focus on that being my job? So they're kind of conversations that I think need to happen. And we're not in a position over here, unfortunately, where we've got the finances readily available to us to support those structures, obviously. But what a fortunate position they're in, that they can have people so dedicated to their roles that they can really focus in and hone in on just being the best they can be in that, in that particular role, whatever it might be. So, It was a huge CPD opportunity for me. I was able to kind of deep dive into every aspect, whether it be strength and conditioning, performance analysis, commercial side, marketing side. Sat down with Bronwyn, who's the CEO of Adelaide Thunderbirds, and how they actually work with their state out there, and where their funding comes from, where their sponsorship comes from, actually the amount of money of sponsorship and how much that's worth to the clubs out there they're just different level. So I've been able to kind of take a step back when I've come back and gone, right, how can I operate more efficiently and better? How can I be better for not only the club, but specifically my passion, which is the coaching side? How can I actually streamline that and be better? I've had really good meetings with my coaches. We've started some really good work with the girls. I've had some really great meetings with my lead performance analysis around stats, and actually being able to back up what we're asking and knowing that we can just streamline things and just be a little bit more efficient with what that looks like. And just give ideas. I come back and every day I had a live document. I updated every single day so I didn't forget anything what I'd done, and I've presented that back to everybody at Thunder of like 40-odd page document. This is what I've done when I'm in Australia. This is what I found out. So yeah, it was good. It was a really good opportunity to get out there and see kind of where I could impact and be better, but also the direction that I believe our sport over here needs to go in as well.
Karen, we've sort of said, or, we've talked about with folks from Australia that it feels like a 10-year gap between where we are and where they are. Do you think that that's fair based on the conversations that you had? Because I imagine you probably went down the commercial route as well and looked at, marketing, because SSN, its ticket sales went up, its audiences are going up. It looks like it's trending really positively.
Yeah, and I think we are probably a good 7 to 10 years behind them, definitely. In that aspect, I think obviously I looked at it from two different perspectives. So you've got your performance element and your performance side. Like, what's the differences there? Why are they better than us? Why is their product actually better than ours so far as on the court, not the game day? Because we all know there's a lot of things that can be better, both production wise and everything else game day. I think from a performance perspective, we're not a million miles apart on the delivery and what we're trying to get athletes to do. I think the messaging and how we're trying to play the game is actually very similar. I'm watching going, yeah, like I could do this, you go out there and you go, oh God, am I really behind? Have I got that? And I'm like, it actually gave me the belief that what I'm doing is actually good. I'm doing some really good stuff, but how can I be better? And I think the things that I've learned from a performance perspective is, in Australia, they're not afraid to just demand, and don't get me wrong, I'm demanding as a coach, but demand those performance elements out of the athletes. So, for instance, like, I think over here, we've massively gone, I think coach education is a huge gap over here, right? There's a massive gap, and I've said that in private, I'll say it publicly as well. There's a big piece of work that needs to be done. I think our coaching awards are so driven by game sense that I understand, we've all got to understand game sense. We've all got to understand invasion, attack, defense. What does it look like? How can we, make practices more game specific? I fully back that. But if a player can't pass a ball from A to B because their technical skills are off, then we're never going to be able to play a game of netball anyway, right? So what I've found is, in Australia, they don't do something 1 week and then put it into a game and expect the players to do it. They do it again. So when they go on court, it's in them, it's instinct. It's not, the coaches aren't turning around going, well, we did that once with you 4 weeks ago and we're asking you to do it now and you're not done it, so why couldn't you do it? No, they've done it for the last 4 weeks, actually. And they've done it again, and they've done and built, and they've done and built, and they've done and built. And that's what I kind of really learned of, I'm doing all the right things. I just need to I just need to be more demanding of that repetition to get where we need to get to. So I do think there's a gap around that coach education piece in that space. I grew up in an era as a player where we were massively drilled, but then that gives me the expectation of a player should be able to pass from A to B accurately, right? And sometimes I think things like those basic skills are missing. So I think that we've highlighted a gap in the performance side of, we're not a million miles away, but we could be better at actually our expectations and getting that delivery. And don't be afraid if a player turns around and goes, why are we doing this again? We did this last week. Because actually, are you perfect at it? No. So we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
So,
that's high performance though, right? That's high performance,
100%.
Karen. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And then I think on the other side of the business, when you come to your commercials and your marketing, the amount of money that is in netball in Australia, and don't get me wrong, nobody's making money. No, like, don't think for 1 minute netball clubs are making money. They're not making money, right? But what does happen is pretty much the salaries of the players are pretty much covered by their TV deal, right? So they get a TV deal, that money goes to the clubs, and it pretty much covers the base of the athletes. So that amount of money, the clubs don't really have to worry about finding to pay the players, if that makes sense. It's covered. Whereas over here, that's all on us. And that's a huge pressure on the clubs. I actually sometimes don't think the players understand. I think since we've gone into professionalisation, I think the players just think, oh, we're professional now, the money's there. The money ain't there. Like, there's got to be a harsh reality that the money ain't there. So the amount of money that goes into the players' salaries over there that the clubs don't necessarily have to find, huge. Adelaide, for instance, they get a lot of their funding through like their membership, which is, for me, I think that's a really brilliant idea. Memberships going towards performance in your area, that these young girls have got these icons that they can look up to and they know they're contributing to that. The sponsorship money is, in comparison, wild. Like, what they can get for a dress sponsor out there. And I'm not just talking about Adelaide, I'm talking about the other clubs as well. The amount of money that they can demand for dress sponsors, for instance, it would sort us out for a year to run a club.
Wow.
So the disparity in that perspective is just huge. And then you look at the actual TV production that goes behind it. And it'll be interesting actually to see how they evolve, because obviously this year their CPA's up, their TV deal's up. So they're going to have to go through a whole new process again this year as to player salaries, CPAs. Are they going to stay behind a paywall TV, or are they going to go free to air? That could impact the amount of money that's involved. So, even though there is a lot of money, like, it's not all easy and, sunshine and roses for them. It's really difficult. And I do think we have very similar issues, just on a very different scale.
Really interesting way of putting it, isn't it, actually?
Yeah,
go on, Paul.
It's almost exactly how I was going to describe it, because I think the first thing you said there, Karen, was that, nobody's making money, but there's more money coming into the pot to make it go round and make it an all-round better product. The dresses look good, the TV production looks good, the players are earning a bit more. Like, we know that, certainly as far as women's sport, there's still a bit of a jump until those sports start to make significant money. Even something like the WNBA, which I'm dealing with at the moment, they're going through their CBA talks and they're waiting for huge salary increases. Those teams aren't making money yet, but there's more money coming in. And I think fundamentally that's probably where, you'll know way more than me, but that's where we have our biggest issue in this country, the money coming into the game in the first instance.
Yeah. And, we can't ignore the challenges that we've got as a sport. And out in Australia, they're dealing with some of their own challenges. We're dealing with rugby and football, and the successes that those guys have had and how brilliant that is. They're having a similar issue with AFL. So a lot of their AFL clubs now have got women's sides that are throwing big money at netballers, young netballers, that are tall, athletic, they've got great hand-eye. So they're starting to find those challenges with AFL coming in to the kind of their pathways and, hunting out their players. Whereas us as a sport, as a female sport over here, fighting the battle with football and being heavily backed by men's teams, essentially, and rugby also. But they've also got the success to back them up. We're seeing the Red Roses win championships. We're seeing the Lionesses win championships, and that excites people. That makes people want to play. Like, we've got to be putting out now a better product, both Super League level and internationally, that's getting people excited. We have to start doing that. And, you know, my experience at Adelaide and how they operate and how professional they are, and just how welcoming they were for me to be able to pick brains and understand. Like, I can't thank them enough. Like, they were absolutely brilliant, and it was a great experience for me. But yeah, we've got a long way still to go, unfortunately.
Fascinating stuff.
We're going to have to take some risks as a sport, right?
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
sometimes netball's too PC. Sometimes people don't want to rock the boat and upset people, but we're going to have to start taking some risks if we're going to get the reward that we all want.
I do think it's really interesting with where Australia is positioned currently with the CBA and everything, because they've got a World Cup next year. That's 2027. And that is something they are really trying to make pop off. There potentially is the Olympics may come into the conversation for 2032. So all of this has to be done at the right time. There's expansion going on as well, which could have implications on the league over here. But Karen, you spoke there about being in Australia. Get ready for this segue, guys, because you actually have an Australian in your camp who has come from SSN and chosen to come.
You've never been away.
You're actually talking about a segue then. I'm going on a segue next week.
Segue, yeah. Sophie, Fawns, Karen, tell us about having her in your environment. Someone from the Swifts, a club you went to go and visit, and she's chosen to come and be with you. That's quite a nice positive sign. How's she getting on? How are things going?
Do you know what? I can't speak about Sophie more highly. You know, like from the moment I had that first conversation, I was lucky enough to get hold of her email, and I fired her an email and said, you know, off chance, do you fancy a conversation? You know, and that was during their season last year. She came back, absolutely. And she's just got great energy. Like, she's such a great person, and I've really admired watching her. Like, I remember watching that first game when she came on for Swifts when I think she was 17, and I thought, wow, this kid's got some potential. And obviously the game where she scored her 7 super shots and, you know, got them into the final and everything was wild a few years ago. So I have kept quite a close eye on her. Never ever thought there would ever be an opportunity to have her in a Thunder camp, because you just think she's a big dog, right? Like, I think she's a big dog. She's got a great future ahead of her. She's almost infectious personality. She's not afraid to be silly, daft, and, you know, make herself look stupid. But she, in the training environment, is unbelievable. Like, she wants to do the extra. She wants to push herself that extra percent. She wants to push everybody else that extra percent. Like, the first time we had a bit of a practice game when we videoed it, she clipped me 37 clips to look at. And I was like, whoa, flipping heck, Sophie's going to take me some time to go through these clips and comment and draw on them and do everything else that we do when we do our huddle stuff. But that, for me, I was like, this is a girl who's come over at 21 with really high ambition. She's not just using Thunder as an opportunity to come and play netball. She wants it to almost accelerate her career. You know, she wants to play back in the SSN at some point. She wants to play for the Diamonds. And, you know, she's picking my brain a lot, and she's challenging me, and I love that, because that's a new challenge for me. So she wants one-to-one. Absolutely, I'll come and meet you. Let's do this. And have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So she's keeping me on my toes, but in a really good way. Like, she takes ball like she doesn't care who she's going up against. She will just get up and she will rip that ball in. And, you know, she's so demanding of herself. She wants to learn. She wants to be the best. But she's also a really great person. So I'm super happy to have her in our environment, and I can't wait to see kind of how she fits in with everybody. Wants to get everybody back. So yeah.
What another segue? You have had players in and out. You mentioned you guys were back from October, and obviously international players have been coming and going. How has the last few months been in that regard, and how's the squad been?
It's been hard. I'm not going to lie. We started back mid-October. We got the girls for a week at the end of October. We had them for a couple of days before Christmas and then the week after Christmas. So it's been very few and far opportunities to have them on the court, especially that first week. Not all of them were fit to actually train, so didn't actually get hands on them that first week. So if I was to count the opportunities that we've actually had to pull the girls together as a group, I can count them on one hand. Obviously, we've not had Nicola at all, so she won't come in until the end of this series. So the first time I actually get my 10 together will be on the 10th of February in terms of on court. Which is only obviously 11 days out from Super Cup. So in some ways, you know, I spend my life challenging decision-making, calendars, opportunities, and I'll continue to do that. You know, if we want to exceed as a league and be the best that we can possibly be, we need time with our athletes to be able to pull together the best possible product. You know, we're probably going to be spending the first 3-4 rounds of, you know, we've got Super Cup, then we've got first 3 or 4 rounds, just finding our feet and trying to build connections, because 11 days just isn't enough. When we say 11 days, there's probably 5 training sessions in there, right? So it's just not enough. And we're putting out a product on TV that we want people to believe in it and buy into. But if we're as rusty as hell because we haven't got those connections, because we haven't played together or trained together, then it's really difficult. So we've still got to keep working on that right balance of what that looks like in my eyes. But when the girls have been in, they've been absolutely brilliant, you know. So having Eleanor back has been great to see kind of her develop from when we first saw her in October to how she left us at the beginning of January. She's a completely different player. Her mindset has been really good. She's totally focused on how she wants to come back and how she wants to play. Fitness wise, she's looking like a different player from October to now, which is fantastic for us and her. Amy's really stepped up. You know, Emma getting that opportunity to be in that environment and get a Rose's cap. Nat coming back from pregnancy and seeing her thriving has been absolutely brilliant. So I'm looking at, you know, I've got 5. Lois, she come back off a big hamstring injury last year, and, you know, she's just Lois. It's like she's never been away. She quietly goes about doing her own business. So when they do come back in, it's super exciting to have them. I just wish I had them more so that they could build those connections, and people probably turn around and go, well, you've got 5 Roses and they're in Roses camp together, they're playing together. But you throw a Sophie in there, who's a key person in that front end, and the dynamic's completely different, you know. So to expect that to just click and happen overnight is, you know, it's not going to happen. So yeah, as I say, it's been tough. It's been really tough. The girls who have been in and around camp more, so your Taylors, your Elliot's, your Josies, absolutely, they've been working the absolute butts off. And I'm just being brilliant. You know, I can't question kind of what those 3 have been doing either.
I suppose it's really interesting what you're saying about pushing on calendars and time and the product that you want to put out, because this is a Commonwealth Games year. The next year is a World Cup year. So if you're, you know, England, you're going to ask for the same amount of time with the athletes again, or, you know, depending on how the result goes in the Commonwealth Games. Obviously, we're in Glasgow, but then we're in Sydney. So then there's also what that takes out on the body playing over down there. But I suppose, Karen, this may be a bit of a loaded question, so we could, you know, park it if you don't like it. But when you're in those rooms having those conversations about calendars, do you find that you're talking to people that understand how to put a squad together, that you can't have your best players together only, you know, for 5 days before the season starts? Like, what is the pushback on those? Is it like, oh, that they're Roses and it should be okay?
I think I don't want to get myself into too much trouble, because I normally do. The Roses want to win, right? Like, and I want the Roses to win. Having played for England myself and been involved, I would love nothing more than for our Roses to go away and come back with a gold medal. So I understand the programming around that needs to be enabling for them to be able to go out there and do that. Absolutely, fully understand that. But we also, if we were to just put our Super League hats on, what are we trying to achieve as a league? You know, you can stand there and say, we want to be the best league in the world. Well, you can't just say there and, you know, stand there and say that. The actions have to match that. And I do sometimes feel that the system that we're working to at the moment is heavily driven and Roses centric, where I feel there could be some more understanding of the amount of money that these clubs are having to invest in programs, in facilities, in arenas is huge. And I think sometimes we're almost just kind of pushed to the side for the sake of what they're trying to achieve with the Roses. But I think we need to get to a point where if we have a fantastic Super League and it's all singing, all dancing, it's brilliant, and we've got the best possible product out there with the best possible athletes, whether that's imports, whether that's Roses, whatever that looks like, if we have got that, that will springboard the Roses. It massively will. So we've just got to make sure that we start actioning and finding a better balance. So yeah, it's frustrating. And I know there's pressures to win medals, absolutely, funding, jobs, everything else that goes with it. But I do think that if our product can be bigger and better, that will ultimately help and springboard the Roses as well. You look at the SSN, they are the best league in the world. You look at how they operate their international program and how much more access they're getting to their players. And yeah, they might have more imports. Has it really damaged? The Diamonds are holding every possible trophy currently. So has them operating the way they operate really damaged that much? So a little bit more trust in the clubs would be nice.
Yeah, they just picked up some silver ferns, haven't they? So that league only just got better.
Yeah, and that's the danger that we're facing, right? Like they're picking up some of the best players in the world. If they extend to 10 teams, as they said, next year, that potentially is damaging to our league. Like they could come and just skim our next best. Well, if they skim our next best, have we got enough athletes ready to step up and push? And I don't think we have. So we've got to look at what is our contingency plan in the league, for the league, moving forwards to ensure that we don't fall too far behind.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation. And I think one that when we spoke to Jace from Adelaide sort of this time last year, we got a sense of they were already preparing for that. And it is a bit chicken and egg, right? We've said this a million times talking about netball. It's almost like you kind of almost need a gold medal. Well, we've had a gold medal. You need a home World Cup, or we've had a home World Cup. It's like maybe it is time to sort of give the teams and the clubs and the franchises like yourselves who are strong enough to be able to kind of hold it, to give them just that little bit more power. It does feel like we might be reaching a bit of a breaking point in that regard.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love it. I'd love for them to just go, right, here's your players. We want them to look like X, Y, and Z by the time they come back into us, and know that we'll do our very best to make sure that happens. I'd love more access.
Fascinating catch up so far. We have got a bit of news to catch up on. I'm going to throw to you, Chloe, to get us off and running on the news agenda, and we can sort of spin through what's been kind of making the netball headlines, and obviously have a little bit of a chat about the international kind of scene and the games and maybe where we stand, because we are only sort of 6 months away now from a major tournament.
Yes. Well, actually, a lot of this is Reed's pregnancy. If I'm being honest, Paul. Obviously, very recently, the most recent of which is Joyce Mavula of Leeds Rhinos announcing she'll be out for the season when she's pregnant. So congratulations to her and her partner. That does leave Leeds without a starting goal shooter. So the recruitment, they said in their post, is ongoing. So we'll see where that lands. But I think you'd be looking at thinking about visas and timing and things like that. Are we looking at someone like Ziggy Berger coming back? Are we looking in that next gen sort of Antonia Mitchell, Sienna Rushton, sort of that layer? What Lauren Palmer decides to do there? Quite a tough break in your second season in the NSL to have something like that happen.
Yeah, she had a tough enough first season being thrown in at the deep end, didn't she? And now she's got this.
Indeed. She's not the only one having to deal with something similar. So West Coast Fever, the fantastic news that Janelle Fowler-Nemard is pregnant. She's being replaced by Romelda Aiken-George, who we thought was done, but she seems never to be done. She's back. One Jamaican in, one Jamaican out. So this will obviously have implications for Jamaica's World Cup Commonwealth Games squad. But we'll talk a bit more about Jamaica because they're going to feature quite heavily in the international section of this. And then for our SSN watchers, Molly Jovic announced her pregnancy as well. She's going to miss the SSN season, so that's in the Melbourne Mavericks. Maddie Hay for the Giants is in to replace her. So some moving parts certainly. And when we're talking about leagues and players and squads and and cohesion, this is all very throws the cat amongst the pigeons, as it were. But congratulations to everybody for that news. Then the other thing, Paul, I wanted to pick out in this news section is this Malaysian Netball Super League, because it seems that we have some names heading down over there to really help grow their league. So Gretel Wetter popped up there last year, which raised some eyebrows, but she's back again with Laura Langman beside her. How about that? But I think I raised this because we need to. It makes me think that sometimes we're a bit narrow-minded with our global vision of netball, so dominated by the big three, if we're calling England, New Zealand, and Australia that. But this idea that you can turn up for a league, which I don't think is very long, maybe 6 weeks. Presumably earn some good money if these players are coming out of retirement to come and do that. Karen, actually throwing it to you, like what does the prospect of something like that raise for you?
We've got to keep a real close eye on it, right? Because by all accounts, the princess in Malaysia is a huge netball fan. She's got big budgets and big ideas and loves netball and wants to drive it. You could almost see, is it the IPL, the cricket? Is that,
a bit like IPL, yeah.
You could almost see something like that kind of happening and drawing some of the big players out there if the money does get to a point where, it's an 8-week commitment or 3-month commitment, which isn't very much to go and earn yourself a decent pay packet. I think we're going to have to keep a really close eye on it. And fair play for Gretel and Laura coming out of retirement. If I wasn't so broken, I think I'd be throwing my name out there too.
I actually thought that's how Chloe was going to move to it, Karen. Do you fancy your chances of a game? Go on, sorry.
Just say that it's not just those two, but and this is in its 5th year, and they have had players from South Africa, Uganda, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Botswana. Yeah. So it is
I've
really
heard
global.
Maybe potential of a couple of South Africans going out and playing this time round too. So yeah,
I definitely think it's something to keep an eye on, because I've been quite critical of kind of world netball as a governing body here for not kind of grabbing the sport and kind of shaking it and putting it into a position where across the globe the players can maximise themselves. I've not been shy in that comment, but if kind of the money isn't there elsewhere, or the organisation isn't, and netball is not the only sport here that's going to be in situations like this. We've seen it in boxing, we're seeing it in Formula One. People who've got money are going to be prepared to invest in a sport, and who's going to begrudge players, certainly in a sport like netball, going away and being able to earn a really, maybe a decent wage for like 6, 7, 8 weeks work. I think is a really interesting development. When you sent that to me, Chloe, I thought it was interesting. And then I sent back to you the story from New Zealand about ANZ players getting sort of a 20% wage cut as well. So it's like, there is a real dynamic here. I know, Karen, you've obviously been involved in those discussions over the summer about or the off season, about how teams look and how teams run, but that's not a great look for the ANZ down in New Zealand either.
I think the fact that the ANZ has also gone down from playing each other 3 times. I know there's less teams out there, but they've gone down to 10 rounds. With the finals on top of that, and then taking the pay cut as well. I think their TV deal is very much under scrutiny, and obviously they've had their issues behind the scenes in the management side of it as well, from CEO all the way down to kind of obviously head coaching at Silver Ferns level. There's a lot going on in New Zealand, and I think it's potentially our time as a league to kind of jump on that. And I'm not saying let's bury ANZ, but if this is, I think we were always, as a league, kind of ranked 3rd, I would say. People, if they got the opportunity to go out to New Zealand, Australia, they would absolutely take that, and fair play to them. Is this our opportunity, to really go, right, let's take some risks. Let's try and leap above that. And when you've got people like the competition in Malaysia starting to throw a bit more money at it and getting a little bit more kind of media presence and things like that, it's going to start attracting players. You might get players that go, actually, could we align the leagues that they play in New Zealand for the 10 rounds and then go out to Malaysia and play the 6 weeks there, or even vice versa before, and the other way around. There could be opportunities for that to happen, and if that happens, and that it could become dangerous for other leagues in the world. So I think us as a league have to kind of jump on that and go, this is our opportunity before ANZ go, recover, and before the Malaysia side becomes huge. We've got to kind of jump on that, I think.
Yes, as you mentioned, IPL, it's definitely there's players in certainly on the cricket front who effectively become sort of almost like a gun for hire and sort of travel around. They play in the Caribbean T10 leagues, then head off to Pakistan for the same thing, and then down to the Australia for the Big Bash. It's it definitely one to keep an eye on. I definitely think that.
Right. Well, that done. News. I think that's most of our news done. We need to recap something that happened in December, Paul, because someone actually asked why we hadn't addressed this sooner. Jamaica versus England, the 2-match series. It was shortened because of the Hurricane Melissa that was devastating for the island of Jamaica and the surrounding areas. That happened the 13th and 14th of December. It was back-to-back games. A Jamaica side that, actually, we had Laura Malcolm on, and we previewed that, the two of us, and she was more focused on what England were going to put out and whether there could be some growth between that New Zealand series to this Jamaica series, because the score lines were probably roughly what we expected given the Jamaican team that came. They were missing all of their stars pretty much. So it was like 80-37 in Test 1, 82-31 in Test 2. So actually England scoring more, Jamaica scoring less the second time around. I'll be honest, I didn't get to it because I was in Canada, and then I couldn't watch it back on iPlayer. It's not there anymore. So I'm going to throw it to you guys. What did we learn from that one? I guess what's the takeaway from an experience like that? You have the external variables that kind of mean it's not what it's supposed to be and what you would have wanted on paper, I suppose. But, did we see an improved England in that series? Karen, I'll throw it to you first.
I don't think you can really look at kind of the improvements, because it's hard to actually judge where you're at when you're playing against, that level of opposition. No disrespect to what kind of Jamaica did bring out here. So I think the score lines were, as you said, were what to be expected. So what did England actually gain from that? I think more match minutes into Jazz Brown was absolutely critical at international level, and I don't think it necessarily matters as such who she was coming up against as in matchups. It was more about her on the international scene, building connections with the units around her, playing in front of those kind of crowds, a different kind of pressure than club. So I think for her it'd been huge to get more minutes under her belt. You can't look further away from Nat coming back as a new mum and getting some minutes under her belt, and what that looked like and felt like for her was key. And I actually had a 1-to-1 with Nat before she went back off to South Africa on the South Africa series, and I think she did some really good stuff. When you look at what kind of connections do you want to build, what do you want to achieve, like phase 1, phase 2 centre passes, your connections with your circles, you could really start to see that coming back without having the pressure of having someone like a Jamie Lee Price running you, or a Karen Berger running you. You've got almost the space to be able to express yourself and try things. So I think that was key for Nat, and I thought she did a great job. And then obviously Emma, I'm bigging up the Thunder Girls here, but obviously Emma got her first international cap, so super proud again. She played centre and wing attack, made a really good account for herself, and I think has definitely showed that there's definitely space for her in that Roses environment in the future. So, and then just getting match minutes into those players kind of around Helen being back. I think Helen's starting to play some more of a better netball. I think there was a little bit of a wobble kind of level-wise for Helen, performance-wise, but I think we saw some of the best of Helen across that New Zealand-Jamaica series, of just really seeing her do that. And I think Liv Sheen, again, the more minutes we can get into someone like a Liv in the international scene. So I don't necessarily think it's about what did we learn, what did we take from it. I don't think there's much you can 100% take from it because of the opposition, but there's definitely small wins across the whole court individually as athletes that both England and those individuals can take from it.
Yeah, I think I caught a little bit of the first one, so I'm not going to profess to kind of having been an expert. I think your point on Helen's a good one. I think it's fair to say sometimes we forget just how long she's been playing international netball, right? And just netball in general. She's been a superstar since her teenage years, and maybe a little kind of wobble or a little drop was perfectly natural. But she definitely looked to me over the last few times we've seen her internationally as someone who's kind of thought, okay, we've got a big 18 months coming up. We've got a Commonwealth Games. We've got a World Cup. It's time to turn it on again. And I would agree with that. I think watching kind of Helen kind of step back up again was great. That combination with Liv is maybe something we're going to see a little bit more of going forward. I think defensively, and perhaps you might be able to say a little bit more on this. It's been great to see the combinations a little bit further out. Fran's kind of taken to her different roles. We've seen her at wing defence. We've seen her at goal defence. Fumi as well. It does feel like England are maybe trying to find the right kind of balance, and that might be a different balance for a different game, right? Flipping things round. But I do think seeing those two sort of move around those positions has been interesting. Whether England and Jess decide to do something with it full on is probably something you're not going to get an answer from that Jamaica game. Maybe we'll see it in South Africa, but yeah, that was probably the most interesting aspect, I thought, how those two kind of work in that role.
Well, I think I agree with you in terms of defence, because it feels like that it's very much, I mean, slightly pivoting towards the South Africa series, what is on the cards in terms of what's being worked out still. It feels like that defence end with Hallie Adio, we got Razia Kwashi going in, Jazz really making that bib hers at the moment. She seems to be having a good run, but she's only played, as Karen's pointed out, is actually about a minute's game. She is quite underexposed when it comes to Australia. So and your real tall timber Jamaican players. So that will be something really curious to look at, particularly because Shani Layton is involved and what she is able to draw out of these players and who wants to stand up at, going forwards. So with that, should we look at the South Africa series then? Because I think it's actually a really curious one. Of course, we England are in a pool with Australia and South Africa for the Commonwealth Games, so it is a must-win game for England when they do meet South Africa. And in the last 5 meetings, England have won 3 out of the last 2. The last time they played was that Netball Nations Cup final last year, where South Africa beat them in that group stage, and then they beat South Africa in the final. Probably should caveat that wasn't the strongest England team available. I think there were some absences there, but you look at Elmarie van der Berg and the level that she was able to get to against Australia and New Zealand and some other players across that team. This is definitely not one that you want to take for granted, and we've certainly been on this podcast saying, Paul, that South Africa are a bit of a dark horse, very much so. Really depending, I think, to be honest, how Jenny decides to play them, but we'll get to that. So 29th, 31st and 1st of February, they're due to play. So there is a one back-to-back game in that, probably part of Commonwealth Games planning. The thing that, before we get into the meat of it, the thing that makes me curious here also is when we got the team sheet, there were asterisks on the page, and we should say that Sasha Glasgow withdrew herself, so Berry Neal went out instead. But there was one asterisk which was subject to fitness, and there were a couple of those, which was a bit concerning. But there was 2 asterisks, which is available only for ranking matches. Now, England went out quite early to South Africa, which, reading between the lines, suggests that they're there playing non-ranking matches. So they are training quite hard ahead of this series. So what that means for loading, I'm sure, Karen, I can see your face there.
See your face.
Because obviously this is very close to Super League, but we are imagining, right, that these England players are playing a lot of warm-up games ahead of this series.
Yeah, obviously there's not been that much information made public around what the prep looks like in South Africa. Obviously, being involved with the players and not fully understanding the program, but seeing the program, there are pre-event matches happening, which I can only assume is for Commonwealth Games prep. I would have thought tournament preparation, being able to play back to back. My big question around that, obviously with the asterisks, is around the players of who are actually available for those pre-South Africa games. So any games that are kind of happening now, is what bodies are available and what bodies are being looked after and managed and so on. Will be interesting. The level of opposition for me would also be interesting to understand what that looks like, because obviously when you play in a Commonwealth Games or a World Cup, you normally don't hit the heights of those real tough games until later on in the competition. So it would be interesting to understand what these warm-up games look like and the level of competition, and what we're actually gaining from that. And is it reflective of a Commonwealth Games and a World Cup or not? But obviously we're not party to that. I just kind of pray from a loading perspective that bodies and minds are being looked after in that space.
Pretty sure you're not the only one, Karen, to be fair.
Okay, well, let's run through this team. I think the only real out is that Emma Rayner wasn't named in this squad, and then obviously, as I've said, Sasha Glasgow is out. The asterisks on subject to fitness were on Imogen Allison, who we got an update on after ankle surgery. She's back in, and Beth Cobden also has a little star next to her name. So really interesting implications for the mid-court, I think, there with what we're looking at. And then from a South Africa side, just briefly, we've got some familiar names from Super League in there. Nicola Smith, Rolien Struiker, Elmarie van der Berg, Casey Chouane, Sam-Marie Visser, who will be coming into Leeds. But there were some notable absences, and there was a post actually that went out about selection and criticism online. It's not the first time South African fans have been told to tone it down, but we know Shadeen van der Merwe, know Nicole Briet, and Karen know Carla Victor. And I wanted to ask you about this one because Carla was someone you had in your environment, and we didn't mention this earlier, but can you briefly tell us about that and what do you make of that decision?
Yeah, so Carla came and spent near enough pretty much 6 weeks with us. And it was purely kind of a development opportunity for her. I think it was a great opportunity. We worked closely with Enigma and how we could actually provide young athletes the opportunity to develop. And it's not just about developing our own and developing, it's about developing netball across the world and how we can make netball across the world better, right? And for me, Carla was somebody that I watched during the Under-21 World Cup in September and was really excited by. And you watch a player and you go, oh, she's bloody brilliant, but if there was just this element and that element that she could work, she could be so good. So yeah, the opportunity came up. She was keen to come over and spend some time with us, and she did do that. And do you know what? Again, a great girl. South African girls I've never had any issues with any of the South African girls. They're a great bunch. Really great girl, a fantastic athlete, like unbelievable athlete. She's strong, she's fast. And it was good for us because we could get her working with Sophie, because at that point I had no attackers in my training session except for Sophie. So we had her in training. We had really worked hard on her first phase availability, her second phase availability, her sight in the circle, where her release points were from, her timing of her change of direction and when to actually use that, because for me that's a weapon. That is a huge weapon for her. And I was actually really surprised that she didn't get selected into this series, because for those that don't know, around the recruitment options that we have in Super League, there are definitely visa issues around recruitment. So we can only recruit players that play for a top 12 nation, that have played in SSN, have played in ANZ, and you have to have played in the top 12 nation. You have to have actually capped in the last 2 years. So for us to be able to recruit somebody like a Carla, if that was what we wanted to do, she would have had to have represented South Africa. So for me, I was actually really surprised that she wasn't given the opportunity, having seen her in training, that she wasn't given the opportunity to kind of be exposed on the international stage. Also, given that having watched South Africa pre-Christmas against Australia and against New Zealand, I think their biggest inconsistencies came across that centre wing attack, goal attack space. Like, for me, there was a lot of errors across that unit, across that, that forward line. And I think someone like a Carla could be the answer for them, in just bringing that stability, the speed, the accessing the depth, going into that goal third, and a vision into the circle. She's fearless in that respect. So I was really surprised that she wasn't given that. For me, South Africa's biggest weakness is across that line and in the centre court.
Yeah, and we should say other South Africans have been named include Camo Maseko, who will be coming to London Pulse. We saw her, as Karen pointed to there, in that New Zealand and Australia series, which South Africa lost both 3-0. They did also win the Africa Cup. That was their sort of in December. That's what they were up to. So they've also been really busy in this off-season, international window. Okay, so England then, the expectation on them, we sort of spoke about this a little bit before the New Zealand series, Paul. I really remember sort of saying here, they've been in camp since August. They should really do incredibly well. I think the expectation is still the same, no? Like, they've been together for how many months is that? Like, this should be something that they go there and win convincingly.
Yeah, I said at the time, I don't think this England squad can have any excuses, really. They've had plenty of time together. We shouldn't be seeing chopping and changing. We should be seeing connections starting to be formed. And I think I asked you the question, do you think England could name the team, or the team that they would have if they had a World Cup final tomorrow morning? And I think that's kind of where you want to come out of, couple of months out from like the second biggest tournament that we play. I think England need to know what they want to be doing, and South Africa, on the face of it, is a very good test, right? We would obviously put Australia above everybody else, but behind that, there's going to be some jostling for medals depending on who's available and when they play. And I think England need to be clean. I think they've been confused at times, so it will be interesting to see if they can put that out on court.
Yeah, South Africa are a threat. They're a real threat, and if they can get all their ducks in a row and firing at the same time, they're a massive threat, I think. You look at recent results, you look at the calibre of players they've got available to them, and obviously, if Jenny can get those selections, right, and firing and working together, and combinations and connections working, they're very, they're very dangerous. We've seen Eleanor, and she's just come off the back of spending a couple of weeks now in Adelaide Thunderbirds, so that's probably elevated her a little bit as well and give her that confidence. Huge threat. Their defence end is young and exciting. If you can get the structure, you've got a Nicola Smith at the back with a Samari Visser and a Jamie. She's just got married, and I'm really sorry. I don't
Golub, I think. Yeah.
Yep. So congratulations to her on her recent nuptials. But if they can get those three firing at the back, so if they can have some real structure out the front of Nicola, right, and get Sana and Jamie really connected across that line, they can cause some real issues on that first phase, second phase centre pass. That'll enable Nicola and give Nicola time to be able to dictate, win ball, fly, do whatever that looks like in terms of a structure. So I think there's a big job for Jenny and her team to get that defence unit firing, but the talent is unquestionable in that defence end for me, for South Africa. It's just how they play it and have they got the right tools to play it.
And Karen, you have had at Thunder several South African players. We have so many South African players in the NSL. What is it about them as individuals that perhaps the South African way, the mindset, that makes them quite special? Because clearly they're all packing their suitcases and coming to make that leap in their netball. Is there something to be said about them as individuals, as characters too?
They're so driven, they're so grateful, and that might sound like a really ridiculous statement to make, they're grateful, but they're just, they come from a nation, of they're getting opportunity and they're so excited to be given that opportunity, and they'll almost kind of do anything for you for that opportunity, you know. And there's been, you know, I've worked with some really fantastic South Africans over the years, you know, and as I said, I've not had any issues with them on and off the court. They've literally given you everything, you know. So those girls fighting for the same thing on international stage, and how passionate they are about South Africa. They talk to you about South Africa, and it is their home, it's their nation, and you know they'll die on a cross for it. And you know, I just think they're a really great breed of athletes to actually work with. And you know, as I say, they've got some weapons in that group. If we can get them firing, they're going to be dangerous.
You know, I think they really want to win as well, don't they? Sorry, that's just one thing I was going to say. The thing that shone through when we've spoken to whoever it's been, Shadeen or Rolene, Elmaray, all at different times, they want to win. And I think what makes them dangerous is I would probably back England to win a 3-game series, but I think in a one-off game in a semi-final, like they are really, really frightening team to play against. But
Yeah. I also wanted to add here the thing with South Africa too is that when it clicks, it seems to, when they're in the rhythm, it seems to really continue. It doesn't. It's always in duration. It's either on or off. It doesn't. It's never. I don't know. I just think that also is another thing that that makes them really interesting. But Karen, I think anybody looking at South Africa now, especially Australians with a view to SSN, they're looking a little bit at Elmaray, and she to me is quite almost like a hybrid kind of athlete, because you've been playing her out at goal attack. She has great hands at goal shooter. But what is it, do you think, that makes her special? Like, why do you think the Thunderbirds came in for her? Like, what, if you're England, like when you're looking at Elmaray, what are you looking at to try and sort of neutralise her or get on top of her? Because she also made some press over in Australia for her attitude, and in a way where you think, yeah, go on, like, because she really wasn't sort of having it. And I think that sort of rustled some feathers up. But she is a character as well, right? So how are you picking her apart?
The thing is with Elmaray is you never know what you're going to get with Elmaray. Like, she is what, 6'4". She isn't your typical standing, holding shooter. So you don't know what you're going to get. She can come out the circle. You know, she can release the circle. She can create that rotation. She can play out a goal attack. She's got some work to do with her lungs to be able to sustain that, I would say, for an hour at international level. But you can get her out there at goal attack and she can cause some damage. You can have her in the circle and holding. So she offers so much variety in her game that it's hard to actually go, right, well, if we're stopping her on the hole, she's just going to come out and create that rotation. She's rapid. Like, you've seen her enter that circle on the baseline, and she's, you know, she can be pretty unstoppable in that respect. And you know, her attitude is like, she don't care. She'll kill anybody who's in front of her. Like, you ask her to, and she will absolutely try and do that for you. And, you know, she does have a face that looks like it's a resting face, but that's just her face. I did always say to her, you've got such a pretty face, Elmaray. You know, smile sometimes, but that's just her, you know, and there's no malice in that whatsoever. So when people pick out her having an attitude, that's not her having an attitude. That's her just wanting to fight for absolutely everything, to do all she can to put it on the table and actually win that game. So, and that makes her a dangerous player when she's got the attributes that she has. I think there's still so much more untapped with her, and I think that's why Thunderbirds probably came in. And I do think she's probably a long-term plan for that for them. I don't think they would expect her to just jump into SSN next year and just be all singing, all dancing, and be a world beater straight away, because it's a, you know, it's a different league. There's going to be different pressure. She's playing in a young unit there, but yeah, she's, for me, if she can fine tune a few aspects of a game, you know, around her lungs when she's at goal attack, she'll definitely be a threat there. She can shoot from anywhere. We've seen it. So she's a danger no matter where she's in the circle. So, you know, you don't get many 6'4" goal shooters that can move and shoot the way she can.
Yeah. And then, I think it's, for me, also the footwork. She seems to move like a cat. Like, you get so many shooters that are her height, but she never seems heavy on her feet, which is, like, again, like thinking of the sustainability of a player like that over a tournament or over a season and a tournament. Like, she does seem to, like, sort of carry herself very delicately, all while being, like, up for it as well. Let's look at England then. Paul, I'm going to throw it to you. What's your starting seven then for Test 1? Where do you think England
who's allowed to play, who might be injured,
right? So, but then you get to the crux of it, right? So what? Yeah, right.
No, I think Jazz has probably done enough to kind of be a starter at the moment. I think she's got all the attributes that you would want, but I think we probably want to see a little bit more of Raz, but she's come back from a big injury, so I suspect we're probably going to see more minutes for her because maybe she's a bit short on them. I can't see how you would not play Fumi as a goal defence at the moment, and I think at wing defence, Beth has been the kind of staple. Imo's back, and she's been really useful when she plays as a wing defence. Again, she's someone who you would want to see international minutes in. In my head here, I'm getting confused between players who need game time and the connections that we want to see. I think Amy's probably the only starter in that team at centre, and I've said for many a year that I think she should have been England's starter for a couple of years. And then up ahead of that, I think probably you start with Liv as your goal shooter and Helen at goal attack, but Lois at wing attack. But again, Nat's back, and we want to see what Nat can do and bring her into the game. But I really, really like the way Lois, Helen, and Liv seem to be forming a front end connection. I would really love to see a little bit more of that. And Karen mentioned the South Africa defence. I think putting those three up against what will be a really kind of formidable defensive test is probably about as much as we can hope to see before the Commonwealth Games. So I think that's probably where I'd come down on that end. I appreciate I kind of fumbled my way through the rest of it.
So what would be your starting seven then, Paul?
Yeah, don't know if I actually said it, did I? But I think I think that's maybe the point, right? Like I think we probably do need to see game time. Certainly for someone like Imogen at wing defence, because I think that's an area of the court where England have kind of fudged things for a long time. And I know I mentioned Fran earlier, who'd done a really good job and has captained the team as well. So, yeah, like I'm not sure I would start her at wing defence, Fran, at the moment.
So interesting, because she did have that she had impact initially in that New Zealand series at wing defence, didn't she? And she is cerebral, like she does enjoy that. And then you do think, okay, she's also got a season with Shani at West Coast Fever now. So that's also something.
I've had brief interactions with Shani. She obviously came and worked at our conference last October. God, it seems it was that long ago. And I've had brief conversations with her since. And I'd love to be in that. Well, I wouldn't love to be in the defence unit because I hated defending. But just the way she talks, I think those defenders, like, they've just got to suck everything they can out of Shani. And I know she's probably really demanding of levels of expectation that she expects. And I think that's great. And she is really passionate and she wants. So I'm just like, that defensive unit have got to thrive under Shani. Like, they've got to. They've got to be like, God, we're learning off one of the most, impactful goalkeepers that, has been one of the most passionate coaches. Like, if you ever get to speak to her, she's so passionate about what she wants and developing and making sure that people are getting the basics right and they can repeat and repeat and repeat. So a bit similar to what I said earlier on. Our defence unit, God, if she can get that defence unit connected and firing how she wants them, like, that for me is exciting. It's just who in what position.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the confusion because, we talk about Fran as the option where she is. We talk about Imo coming back. We talk about, three very, I suppose, different goalkeeper options as well. But like Fran's been played at goalkeeper a few times as well. They've really been kind of moved around a lot in those positions. So I'm not sure that's been a particularly good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. I wonder also, it's hard because you want everyone to be fit, but we've also got a season in between this and the Commonwealth Games. And so obviously Imogen is in SSN, and then Beth is going to be in at Lightning with Jess Shaw, who is a wing attack option that's also been floating around. Not everybody's going to get to go. And it is like, is it a case of we genuinely have, being England, genuinely have options, or is it still a bit attritional? Are selection decisions going to still be made off the back of this? Because you can't have all these individuals. And at the same time, it does feel that, to your point earlier, that Amy is the starting out and out centre in this group. But outside of that, who is there? And if Imo is not fit enough to run out that much at centre, like, that doesn't give you a ton of options going in before the Commonwealth Games start. I don't know. I guess we're speculating a little bit because we don't really know where Imo is at in her recovery. Obviously, like what sort of minutes she'll be running. Karen,
it'll be interesting just off the back of, obviously they're playing Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. And you've got an Imo and a Beth that both went out there with asterisks.
Yeah.
So in my mind, and I might be completely off piste here, is, are those players going to be able to go back to back Saturday, Sunday if they've gone out there with potential question marks over where they're at? So, will we only see a Beth and an Imo in either one game in total, or will we see them across Thursday then Sunday? Like, how is that potentially going to be managed? Or are they okay and just good to go? And that was just, asterisk was, we're just going to see how they go, but they're fine, and it was just precaution. I don't, we don't know. We're not party to any of that. So, my question over Imo as well, like, if she isn't going to be fit to run out games as centre at this point, and she goes back to SSN, and she's going into a Firebirds environment where a Maddie Gordon is now in, and your Maddie Gordon really is I think she's great. I love Maddie Gordon. Like, she's likely, I mean, again, we don't know. This is all ifs and buts. She's likely to be playing centre. Imo didn't get much at centre last year at Firebirds. She got a lot of wing defence and did a great job once she found her feet out there. She was good. So I'd question how much centre Imo's actually going to get across the season, as to, what that looks like going into a Commonwealth Games.
So we have got more questions. Yeah, we have got more questions than us. None of us can pick a 7, right? That's where we've come out on this.
Go on. Tell us, Karen.
Right at this moment in time, just off the back of kind of recent, I would go Jazz, Fumi, Fran, Amy, Lois, Helen, and Liv. And I'd use Eleanor as an impact. I think we need to get Eleanor in there, build her international minutes up.
Yeah.
As I say, like, she's looking super better than she was in October, a million times better. So she needs more minutes in there. Nat needs more minutes. Imo, obviously, if they're looking at Imo and Beth, what does that look like? So I'd have my 7, and then you'd need to understand what your impact of those players is going to be and when you want to use it, really, to get the most information out of it.
And on your defence end, so if
that's probably like really forceful.
That's pretty much what, to be fair, that's pretty much what I said as well.
Oh yeah, I think, Paul, that is basically what you said. What you didn't quite say, but wanted to
is a question. Like, we've gone away from centre being a question to wing defence being a question at the moment, it feels like.
When you have 3 out-and-out goalkeepers in this squad, do you walk away with 1 or 2 going into Commonwealth Games? That's a question I'm going to put to both of you, because I'm not sure.
2.
Okay. So do you think that that Jazz is almost like in, and then it's between Raz and Hallie? Is that sort of, yeah?
I mean, again, this is me just being in my mind what that would look like. But I think if I was being realistic, I think Jazz, if she carries on the projection that she's on, and then I think it does come between Hallie and Raz, yeah.
And then Fran is in.
Yeah, and I think when you've got players like Fran and Fumi who could also play goalkeeper, I don't know why you would want to limit your squad options to 3 players who are essentially just goalkeepers. I'm sure they could play elsewhere, but you know what I mean. Like, I always feel when you're building a squad out for anything, you don't want to limit yourself or pigeonhole players who can just do one thing. You don't want too many of those players. Like, you wouldn't want probably 3 standalone goal shooters, would you, in that squad? You'd want flexibility. So I think it's only fair you would ask the same question at the other end.
I mean, really, the shortage is in goal defence, I think, right? Because is there, I don't know, now I'm just off the top of my head, but is there a scenario where Fran is on and Fumi isn't on, or vice versa?
You've got 2 very different players there, aren't you? In Fumi and Fran, two very different players. Like, Fumi's your instinctive player that will sight opportunity, go win your ball. She'll just win your ball off a 3-foot mark, or your defensive structure set up for her to win ball, whatever that looks like. Fran's super bright, super clever. She's a very intelligent netball player. Like, she probably sees things happening before they start to happen. So for me, like, the goal defense position, it's what else are the other players doing? Like, we played Pulse recently, and Hallie was running out of goal defense, and she did all right. So you look at that and go, are other players adding to their game to try and say, put their hand up, this is me, and I'm doing all I can to be a better option than I maybe might have been before. So, we're not seeing that side of it either.
I don't think you should underestimate. You made a great point, Karen. Like, with Shani on the bench alongside, like, Fumi, Fran, Hallie, Jazz, Raz, they're all really intelligent netballers as well, really. Like, you sit a game for even 1 or 2 quarters and you watch it almost with Shani alongside you, and then you go on with a purpose to deliver something that might flick a really close game. Like, to have those players as options doing that as well, I think is something that is pretty important, certainly in tournament net.
Absolutely.
Any other final thoughts, guys?
I'm excited to see what happens in this South Africa series. I really am. Like, I think England, as Paul said, I think they'll come out with a series win. They should, and if they don't, then we've got some serious questions to ask. But I'm interested to see what the South Africa situation is. Have they fixed those inconsistencies and unforced errors across that attacking third line and centre position? Because that was massively error ridden in those series before Christmas, and that was, for me, one of their biggest issues. So yeah, I can't wait to have a watch next week. Like, just see. I don't know what Jessie's going to do, and I don't know what Jenny's going to do. So let's sit back and
it's a live show. Yeah. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Right then, so that is England, South Africa, something we're all clearly very excited to get into. But shortly off the back of that, we have our final major sort of test series that's happening. Australia versus Jamaica, coming into February, which is, I think, kind of unprecedented in terms of calendar, like going that deep into the year. Stacey Mirinkovic has obviously said to SSN, I need this test series, make it happen. Because it really feels like getting Jamaica with their best players is a challenge, obviously, and we appreciate the circumstantial differences between the Jamaicans and the top 3 other nations. So that is happening dotted around Australia, 5th, 8th and 11th of February. So no, they're not going back to back, but they are travelling around. We don't have an Australia team yet. That hasn't been announced, but we do have a Jamaica squad. Karen, you kind of actually pointed out to it earlier. We have quite a different team from that versus England. So there are, I counted 4, 5, 6, 7 players out from that England team and some coming in. But in that's also not going to be there, if this makes any sense to anybody as I'm talking, is no Shamira Sterling-Humphrey, no Shimona Jock, no Janelle Fowler-Nemard, and no Jodie-Ann Ward. So that's still a bunch of Jamaica's best players not in. Now, we did say that Janelle was very unlikely to be in that Commonwealth Games squad. Shamira, Paul, we spoke about it, you and I, last week, but put out a really powerful post about post-pregnancy blues and really struggling in hospital. So clearly that return to play is just actually about enjoying netball and enjoying life. So I can understand why she's not available for this one. Jodie Ann Ward did that ACL at the back end of SSN, so clearly I don't know if she's fit, ready, but that's all we know on that. Shimona Jot, we don't know why. That doesn't make sense. But incoming is Katie Anderhaney, Tanya Wilson, and Nicole Dixon-Rochester, who has, I noted, not been in that team since 2023. So that's an interesting addition. Okay, this is the last one before the Commonwealth Games. What are we expecting from this? Karen, what do you reckon?
I think I touched on it earlier. Without the firepower, I think Jamaica are really going to struggle. You know, I think you've got Katie Ann and Latanya Wilson, who obviously play, I think, probably goal defence at the back for Jamaica. And I think Katie Ann last season probably played some of the best netball I've seen her play. Like, I think she's had a few years of struggles, you know, whether she was at Vixens and Sunshine Coast. And I think actually she thrived at Fever last year. And I think she definitely did play some of the best netball. So it'll be interesting to see where she's at. Obviously, Latanya's not been involved with the England series, but has been back training. Having seen on social media, she's been back training with Adelaide Thunderbirds. So they're always going to be a danger. They're always going to be a threat to win ball. But I think the Australians they're just going to be too strong for them. And as I said, without that firepower up front, I think it's going to be a real tough ask for Jamaica to kind of, I'd say, get within 20 goals, really.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's probably pretty strategic from Australia to be playing Jamaica as their last game. I think they probably would have wanted a stronger Jamaica. But I do think they'll have too much. It's good that we're seeing sort of your big names coming back into the fold for Jamaica, and I think how much of a test it provides for Australia, though, I'm not really sure it does. I think they'll win pretty comfortably in the end.
Yeah, I think had Australia maybe known that the outs were going to be out, they maybe wouldn't have gone ahead. To be honest with you, because as you say, we're going into February. SSN teams are probably not entirely happy to be losing players at this point, you know, as we are. I think both sides of the pond, we've basically said going into February in an international window, it's not really okay, and it's far too late in the build up to the season. So I think had Australia had known what squad they might be coming up against, it might have been a different story as to whether this would have gone ahead, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair to suggest that. I mean, Karen, when it comes to international windows, is that something that World Netball has jurisdiction over, and that people ask them to extend it or close it, or is it not as formal as that?
From my understanding, and again, you know, I'm not in there, so I don't really know. But as far as I'm aware, the World Netball don't necessarily get a huge say on it. I do think it kind of come down to the powerhouses. You know, I think the top three, they just kind of do what they need to do, and they'll just run with it. So I think I would encourage kind of World Netball kind of going, no, we're gonna grab a hold of this and put some real stipulations in as to what those international windows look like, so that we can just be a lot more aligned, and our product hopefully could then thrive, knowing what we're dealing with year on year. We're forever not knowing what next year is going to look like, so planning, etc., becomes really difficult. So I think, you know, if everybody knows what they're dealing with, we can just crack on and do it. So I would love World Netball to just grab a hold and go, right, this is what we're doing. This is when the internationals are going to be. This is when clubs have got access to players. And there's some real rules and stipulations. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but we can all have a New Year's wish, right?
So I was trying to explain to someone the other day, and this is a bit macro, but I think with netball, because we have these 2 years that don't count for anything, count, as in, we do test series. It sort of seems like we pick and choose, or nations pick and choose who they want to play. They build up their international calendar. We do have some like big fixtures like Constellation Cup or Horizon Series or whatever you want to call them. But it doesn't seem to have any consequence until all of a sudden it really does, because then we're warming up for a major and then we have a season and then we're off. So it's really hard storytelling to sometimes explain why this series matters and why, or try to explain that it should matter. And I was looking at like basketball, for example, with FIBA and the way they do that. And obviously we don't have an Olympics in netball yet. Maybe it comes in. I think that decision gets made fairly soon. But one of the ways they kind of keep people interested in their international netball is qualifiers. And for netball, we don't do, because maybe there aren't enough countries that play, we don't do qualifiers. We kind of say like this top four is already in. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is it feels to me so absurd. I don't know of another sport, and I know quite a few sports where the international window is so long, but also where it's also quite saturated as well. And obviously people want to sell tickets and people want to watch their international team play, but they also don't want to watch their team play a team that isn't the best that it could be and get to do it back to back in the same place at the same time, in London or whatever it is. So it feels like the market and what fans want and what fans get, and then also what these national teams need to do performance-wise, is all a bit all over the place. So to your point, I think I'm with you, where it's like, can we just actually align all of this? Because it's so confusing to explain to somebody, where essentially we actually just have 2 years that matter and 2 years that they do and they don't, because you're always preparing. But here we are talking about an England team before a Commonwealth Games where we're still not sure who's in and who's out. So it feels a bit...
Well, that could all change again, right? If World Cup's going every 2 years, then we're not going to have that 2 year of dead space or whatever we call it. So again, that's where the big picture definitely needs looking at and aligning as to what that actually means for everybody.
This has been a monster episode, so thank you for sticking with us. We are going to round off that. That's the end of international netball. Super Cup is the next thing on the NSL agenda. Karen, you've got a smile on your face. How do you love the Super Cup?
Do you know what? It's a run out for my girls. Bearing in mind, I get the girls 11 days before Super Cup. While Super Cup matters, of course, it matters. It also is just an opportunity for us to build connections and see where we're at, without that pressure of we're in the league and every game matters kind of thing. So whilst we'd love to enter Super Cup and win, absolutely, because why else would we be doing sport? It's going to be for us an opportunity to just run out some legs and see where we're at, because 5 training sessions running into that, as I said, it's going to be finding our feet, finding combinations, and it is what it is. And do you know what? It's a fun day out for the crowd. The crowd get to see every player across the Super League, hopefully, if everyone's fit, in the same place at the same time, and play some really exciting netball. So yeah, it's happening in 4 weeks, something like that. 4 weekends. I'm looking forward to it. As I say, it's a run out. I'm just excited to have my whole team in. And I don't think you can really take too much from Super Cup in terms of results wise, because Super Shot, I hope I'm not doing any spoilers, but I think Super Shot's going to be a little bit longer. That's already been put out, hasn't it? Super Shot's going to be a little bit longer. So yeah, a lot more excitement, I think, round the arena.
Yeah, I think you're so right about, I remember calling it a sugar rush. Like, it just is like so much going on, so many colours and so many buzzing sounds. But
you know
just
what,
on the
it's
Super
not
Shot,
going to be this year though. No lights out. Listen,
the People's Champion.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yes.
On the Super Shot, Karen, do you feel like you've learnt a little bit more about it now? You've had a season of it. Do you think you understand it better as a coach?
Yeah, and it's funny because we've actually done a bit of work on it over the last few months in terms of how many, score lines, quarter score lines, scorelines in Super Shot time, who's winning, who's not, like, you know, what those percentages are, what those point differences are. So we've now got a bit of a handle on what we think we need to achieve in that Super Shot time if we're wanting to win games. So, and it's not going to be all about just shooting super shots and let's hope we win. There's going to be, I think, a little bit more strategy around that's actually played both in attack and defence. I know definitely will be from our perspective in terms of the information that we've been gathering and working on.
That's so interesting. So you've crunched the numbers.
We have.
Is that something you learned when you went to Australia, or is that something you wanted to do anyway?
No, so yeah, I've just kind of streamlined how we want to operate this year, and we have a Thunder Way, and it's how can we streamline that so that we're not repeating ourselves week on, week out, making the girls more responsible for, you know, these are the basics that we expect without putting them in a game plan each week. So we're working on a document currently, and I've put some stats in there, some information in there, and we just wanted to make sure that the stats that I'm putting in there are actually reflective of what's in my head versus reality. So yeah, we got our lead PA guy Luke to do some number crunching for us, some work around that, and he's produced this unbelievable document. Honestly, me and Laura went through it last week with him. We were actually sat clapping, going, "This is amazing!" So yeah, we've number crunched that, so that actually what we're putting in our document to the players, we've actually got real time evidence of this is why we're aiming for X, Y, and Z.
So interesting. And then I suppose defensively as well, the super shot, have you had a look at that as well and thought a little bit more about how you want to stop that? Because I was having a conversation with someone the other day about Rolene and whether we would ever have a season like that with those numbers ever again, or was it the perfect storm of a really accurate super shooter who was taking a lot of the load, but with defenders that were still trying to figure out how the hell do we actually defend this?
Yeah, I mean, Rolene's a weapon, and she's, as you say, super, super accurate. Would I be surprised if she was hitting those numbers again? Yeah, I think I would, because everyone now has got information and what that looks like. It'll be interesting to see whether the dynamic of having an Anya in there is going to change that pressure for Forest and what that looks like for them. So I would be surprised if those numbers were hit again, because yeah, I think tactically you're starting to see people, as that hooter goes, you're starting to see people getting into more shapes, sitting higher in the circle, trying to win ball earlier or forcing, you know, play back. You know, what does your centre pass first phase, second phase look like? Who do you want to land the ball? So it's where you can create those pressures. So I do think there'll be, you know, we've definitely looked at it. We've definitely looked at what we need to keep teams below, and it's not even super shots, it's points. So we're purely now looking at points, not actual shots or goals. So yeah.
God, it really has changed the game, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I think it has. Amazing. Well, listen, Karen, thank you so much for joining us on this whirlwind tour of, like, it feels like we've did about 3 months of netball in an hour and a half. Yeah, it's been so good, and for opening up about Australia and letting us in on all of that. It's been fantastic, hasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it's been a fascinating listen. I think we probably could have chatted for another hour and a half. Maybe we still would have got finally got a 7 down for England. I think we're looking at a really fascinating few weeks as we finish kind of the international window and get ready for the Super League.
So we should say probably be away for a little while because of other work commitments. I mean, Paul's off hobnobbing with the
around the
football.
world.
Jetting around the world. I'll be watching some rocks going down some ice with some consequences.
And if you haven't already, watch Chloe trying to throw some rocks down the ice.
It's hilarious. Sorry, Chloe.
That's all right. You know what? I think you have to feel the sport you're right about, and I have to be humbled. Yeah.
Listen, I admire you for it, because there's absolutely no chance you'd get me on a gridiron field with massive men trying to knock me over when I throw a ball. So don't worry about that.
I think I had one netball player see it and reply to me like, "I think I tore my ACL watching you," and I was like, "Yeah, that's about right, isn't it?" Okay. Thank you so much, team, and speak to you all soon then.
Enjoy the Winter Olympics and the Super Bowl. Very jealous. And we'll see you at Super Cup.